Hello, everybody. So good to be with you. Thanks for coming each week. Many years ago, when I first started writing, I opened my first book, The Dragon Doesn't Live Here Anymore, with a classic story that means more to me now than it did so many years ago. It goes like this. When a certain man passed away and went to heaven, God was showing him the different realms, the different rooms that people go to when they leave their world. And God opens one door, and there's a huge banquet with lavish food, like a wonderful smorgasbord laid out with every wonderful amenity. But the people who were surrounding the banquet look very sad, and it's almost like a tragic scene. And the man looks closer, and they all have very long spoons. In fact, the spoons are so long that they can't get the food in their mouth. So even though there's a huge banquet, these people are starving. And the man says, wow, that's a terrible scene. And God said, yeah, this is hell. And the man said, well, if that's hell, then show me heaven. So God walks down the hall with them a few more doors. He opens another room. And there's the same banquet with a fabulous layout of exotic dishes, just glorious looking. But everybody in this room is smiling, and they're all happy, and the tummies are all filled. And the man looks again, and he realizes that in heaven, people had learned to feed each other. In other words, when they were just on their own, trying to dig it out, they couldn't. But when they figured out how to cooperate, then it became heaven. So I think it's a great metaphor for life on earth. We all have hardships. It's a hard place for many, many people. But somehow, when we learn to help each other, we defeat the devil, so to speak. We rise above limits, and the earth can become close to heaven if we make it so. And I recently heard a true story that was very touching and totally exemplifies this particular parable. The two men in China, both of whom have a first name of Jia, J-I-A, and they were childhood friends. And as they grew up, both of them experienced tragedies. As a little boy, one of them touched a live electric cable, and he lost both of his arms. The other fellow at an older age had some kind of eye disease, and he went blind. And both of them were in despair. And they decided that they did not want to live the rest of their lives in despair. So if they could just do something that would make their lives productive and help people or help the planet, they would feel like they had a purpose in living. And so they developed this scheme where they went off into the forest, into an area that become eroded, either through environmental or human tree harvesting. And they decided they would plant trees. And the man with sight leads them into the forest, and then the other man climbs on his back, and together they found a way to plant trees. Neither of them could do it alone, but together they both complemented each other's emptiness, so to speak, and they became a whole person by coming together for this common task. And over 10 years now, these two men have planted 10,000 trees. One is blind and one is armless. So talk about the power of coming together. And I will post the story, the link to that story in the comments, that particular video. So look what human ingenuity can do to overcome adversity. And I think we all had to do that during the pandemic, those that chose to do that. You've heard me say many times that although the pandemic was a very dark time for lots of people, sadly, other people used it to rise spiritually. And so some people were holed up in fear and protectionism, and other people reached out, like the man who in Australia who saw a long line of people waiting for public assistance to buy food. And he went to his bank and took out $10,000 and gave $100 to everybody in line. And he said it was the best money I ever spent. So that's one way the ill nature of the pandemic was defeated. And then I heard about a group of flight attendants who were grounded due to the pandemic, and they took their time and they went into the hospitals and they created hospitality rooms for the doctors and nurses who are on the front lines of treating COVID patients. And they used their talents to serve in the hospital instead of sitting home and just being afraid and hiding. There are many, many, many stories like this. Somebody should write a book about it, because it was really a wonderful way to find light in the midst of darkness and bring healing where there was fear. And we've said many, many times that there's only two emotions, love and fear, and they both can never exist in the same space. Where there's fear, if you bring love to it, the fear is healed. And so the answer to all human fear is love. And one of the most powerful ways to demonstrate love is to come together and do together what we can't do as individuals. I love a quote by Abraham Joshua Heschel, a great Jewish theologian, who said, "When I was a young man, I admired people who were clever. And now that I'm old, I admire people who are kind." And so what happens as you age, you start to see that the idea of getting stuff for yourself is not so exciting, although we can all have lots of fine things if we want. But reaching out and serving brings a deeper reward than just getting stuff. And I saw another amazing video. I'll also post this link in the comments. It was an Eastern European country, and there was a flood. There's a river that went through the middle of town, and a dog had gotten stuck in the river, and it was just clinging on tenaciously, trying to not be swept away and drown. And so several men saw what was happening to the dog, and they wanted to find a way to get to it and help it, but there was a very long and steep embankment. And I think it was a cement embankment, so it was really hard to get a footing. And so as more people walked by, they gathered more volunteers until they had formed a chain of 8 or 9 or 10 men who all held each other's arm with one hand and then held up somebody else down below, until finally, after a while, the chain became long enough, and the final man at the bottom of the hill was able to reach in and rescue the dog. Now that's it's a very touching, almost tear-jerking scene to watch this happen. And it shows, you know, when I was in college, they started this thing called the Human Potential Movement. It's still alive today, but I don't know if it goes by that name. And the idea is that as human beings, we all have the potential to go down or to go up. And very sadly, we see the worst of the human condition in terrorist bombings and wars and mall shootings and nasty politics and selfishness. I mean, the news is full of those stories. At the same time, there is the potential for us to go up. We can all be devils, we can all be angels. And of course, the purpose of our life is to become more and more angel-like. And the way we do that is to recognize we're already angels. Like you don't become an angel. You don't do things to be good and get to be an angel. You get to recognize that God has already created you as an angel, that the divine is already in you. And the game of life is to express that divinity by coming together and helping each other. And there was a man I know, one of the Hawaiian Islands, and he had a very, very bad reputation, and people kind of shied away from him. And then I read he was a diver too, and I saw this video where there was a small shark, and sharks are mostly friendly, to tell you the truth. A lot of people dive with them, and the shark had gotten wrapped up in some kind of rope from fishing business. and the shark could not swim, and it was sinking, going to die. And this man dove down, and there's a video of him, and he took a knife and he cut away the rope that was encumbering the shark, and the shark was free. And this man, so this man, although he had a bad reputation, he also had the propensity to be a healer, and to be a light worker. And this is all of our story. We all have the propensity to be selfish and nasty and evil and bicker, and these long feuds go on for years and years and years. And we all have the potential to say, wait a minute, I don't think I want to do this anymore. Like, I'd rather just follow spirit. And there was a book years ago by some friends of mine, Barbara and Robert Varley. They were Course in Miracles teachers. I think the name of the book is "The Peace of God is My One Goal." It's a quote from A Course in Miracles, and they tell this story that they used to travel around the country doing Course in Miracles workshops. They had a van, and they would give them on donation basis. And so one winter time around December, they were traveling through Texas, I believe, and their van broke down. And they took it to a mechanic, and it was so bad that it was essentially unfixable. So they had to get a new van. And so they went to a dealership, and they made a deal on a new van. And as they were negotiating with the salesperson, the Holy Spirit, the voice of God, said to them, don't negotiate, just pay the asking price. And if you've ever bought a car, this is unheard of, that you basically have to haggle until you reach some common ground. But in this particular case, even though the van was quite expensive, the voice said, don't haggle, just pay the asking price. So they were practicing listening to Holy Spirit. And they just agreed. And of course, the salesman was shocked, but he was happy to make the deal. And then afterwards, he broke down and cried. He said, it's Christmas season, and it's been a slow season for sales. And so I have these kids, and I want to get them presents, but I haven't been able to buy the presents. And the commission from this sale will enable me to buy my kids presents. So thank you very much. Bless you. Of course, they were rewarded. And now the miracle happened when, as they went on with a new van to give their by donation lectures and seminars, suddenly the income swelled from the donations. Like, it went way, 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 way higher than it usually was. And they actually paid off the van in a short time. So the moral of the story is that when you listen to Spirit and you just give freely and support each other, then all the support you need will come to you. My teacher Hilda used to say, take care of God's business, and God will take care of your business. And I found that to be true. Whenever I reach out and make my priority service instead of getting stuff, then all the stuff I ever need just shows up and comes miraculously. So that's where it sits. Before we have our meditation, I do want to tell you about my two upcoming programs. One is here. One is Into the Light. It's a 4-evening summit, so to speak, where, I'm joining with 4 of my most esteemed colleagues, people I respect the most. Mike Dooley, who's an amazing teacher, motivational lecturer, author, really bright light, a dear, dear friend of mine, dear guy. Marie Manucherry, who's a very gifted medical intuitive. She's helped a lot of people through her psychic vision. Ariel and Shaya Kane have a book called Working on Yourself Doesn't Work. It's all about relaxing into enlightenment. And Deborah Engel, who's an amazing Course in Miracles teacher. So I'll be spending 4 evenings in December, 6 to 9, sharing a presentation with these people. It's on a donation basis, so to speak. You can set your own tuition. So go to my website, alancohen.com, and you can sign up for that. And of course, we're beginning life coach training in January. This one is unique in that we'll be doing it entirely online instead of having the 4-day in-person retreat. So if you're worried about traveling or travel expenses and you'd rather do it from home, this is probably the one time we'll do it where you can have a 6-month certification course intimately with me and a group of other people, and you become a professional life coach and do it either professionally or use your coaching skills more quietly in your current business or family. So please sign up for one or both those programs. I'd love to meet you in person and play with you and support you. So let's just take a moment to go within and take these wonderful principles. I love this subject. It's all about coming together to heal. There's another lesson from Course in Miracles that says, when I'm healed, I'm not healed alone, which means that all healing is shared. And when you receive the gift of healing, you want to pass it along. And very often when someone else receives a gift of healing, they pass it along to you. For example, in AA or the 12-step groups, people are going through a hard time with an addiction. And there's a sponsor. There's somebody who has gone through that process and come out on the other side. And that person wants to share his or her healing. So you reach back and you become a sponsor for somebody else who's struggling. And that's why that particular system of 12 steps is perhaps the most successful therapy I've ever seen, because it's from the heart, it's selfless, it's people caring about each other, and it works. So, and when we come together, things work. Okay, let's close our eyes for final few moments here. Take a deep breath if you would. And I'd like you to have a vision of yourself walking on a path alone. And many of us do feel alone at times, don't we? Feel like we have to do it all by myself. And as you're stumbling or struggling to move on this uphill path, suddenly a hand reaches out to you on one side. And if you want to think about something you're struggling with, you can apply it to this visualization. What would you most like help with at this time? If you could wave a magic wand or get a miracle gift, what would that be? And imagine that there is someone who can serve as an agent or a channel through which that gift comes. And you feel reaching out to you from just a little bit higher up on the mountainside, another hand. And you take that hand, and that hand is firm and strong. And as you clasp it, you feel, wow, I'm not alone, I can do this. And suddenly your climb up this mountain becomes easier. You still have to take your own steps, but you're not alone. And there's somebody who has mastered this length of the journey, who knows the way, who knows where the pitfalls are and where the boulders are, and how to take this course easily. So as you take this hand, you feel bolstered and guided and supported, and you can relax and know that you're going to make it somehow. You're going to come out on the other side of this. It's going to work, and you're going to gain through this. You're going to master through this. You're going to learn through this. And imagine too that there's somebody striving up the mountain on the other side of you. And because you've received help, you want to give help too. And so there's a hand outreached to you, and you take that hand. And so now you have a human chain, so to speak, like those people who help the dog. And somehow, as you go up the mountain together, it's easier because you're linked. You're not trying to go it all yourself or find the answers yourself or make stuff happen. You help. And realize too that it's not just people who are helping you, but God is helping you. A higher power sent that person to you to take your hand. Higher power also sent that person for you to take their hand. Because the gates of heaven are entered as a multitude, not as individuals. So let us breathe easy and know that we're on our right path. and that we all have the potential to become the angels that we are. I didn't say to become angels, I said to become the angels that we are. And as we recognize that each of us is God created in the image and likeness of God, and everything that Jesus and Buddha and Muhammad and Moses and all the great ones were, we are. If we're aware of a holy master, an enlightened being, we're seeing our own reflection. That master healer is not really outside of us. In a way it is, but more fundamentally, it's the inner master that we're awakening. And let us vision for a moment a world where people cooperate to the point where healing comes naturally, and the struggles that people create are overcome by people acting with a whole heart. This is the only reason I can figure out we're here, to come together and to support each other. And I think it was George Eliot, the British author, who said, "What are we here for, if not to make each other's lives easier? What are we here for, if not to make each other's lives easier?" Have a wonderful week. Thanks for tuning in. Love you lots.